All right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Okay, that's what I like about blockchains. I keep getting older and they keep making new coins. So here are some people that are experts on things. Uh, one more shout out. If you are pitching, come join the other pitchies over here in this side, and we're going to do a quick sync. But I want to introduce this panel. Marco, love the shirt. As you guys all know, these people, you've seen them around. They're going to talk about cross-chain messaging, and that's going to encompass a lot of things. If at any point you don't understand what they're saying, you're not alone. And, feel free to, hiss, hiss. And that'll cue them up to...
what we're saying either.
What'd you say? Most likely they don't understand what they're talking about. So we're going to have a good time, and thanks for coming to the Crosschain messaging panel.
Hello, everyone. You're all going to be witnessing the most dysfunctional panel you've probably ever seen, so enjoy. Before we get started, I think it'd be best if you guys just introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Marco. I work for Cosmos. I am a DevRels engineer at Interchain Berlin. This is cross-chain messaging for you.
Hey, go again, Illia.
Hello, I'm Illia, founder at Near.
I'm James Prestwich, a protocol engineer at C Labs. I work on inter-blockchain protocols and fun stuff like that.
Awesome. So I think one of the issues we have in this space is that terminology gets used over and over quite consistently. Messaging is one of those things. There's multiple different kinds of messaging. There's messaging in the protocol level consensus messages that you see. There's network-based messages, and then there's more broad things like messaging and messenger apps, which are things like status. So for each of you, what is your definition of cross-chain messaging, and what are we actually talking about here?
For me, it's just mainly, of course, in Cosmos world, it's IBC. So inter-blockchain communication, another very generalized term. And just message passing between chains.
Well, let's go for it. I mean, I think there's definitely message passing between chains and ability to communicate, ability to read data between them. But obviously, there's also all the we have a lot of chains. Everybody's asking which chain, why this chain. So really messaging about how this industry will be evolving and how things will be actually working between these chains in the future. So there's a lot of messaging to do there.
So from a low-level perspective, a chain comes to consensus on some data, and messaging is when we want chain B to come to consensus that chain A came to consensus on some data. In practice, this is when we want some DApp on chain B to hear what happened on chain A, whether tokens moved around or whether someone got liquidated. But it's consensus on consensus data, yeah.
So when we're talking about the messaging, which is DApp A listening to what DApp B does on some other chain, why is that so difficult? Why is that a challenge that we've been working so long to solve? What are the root issues there? Because there's also the difference of what Near is doing, which is a sharded environment, right? So you have cross-shard messages, which is a whole complexity in and of itself, and then you obviously have cross-chain messaging, which is what you're talking about, right? So where do the challenges stem there, and maybe how are they similar versus different from cross-shard messaging, like what you guys face in Near?
So at the root, kind of the issue is that blockchain is supposed to validate everything, right? Like everybody in the world should have kind of exactly the same view on things, and that's a consensus. And so if you want to have a consensus on somebody else's consensus, you need to verify the whole thing to be absolutely sure. And so the only true way to do it is literally run a node of that network and include hashes in both ways, pretty much. And that is very expensive, very complicated, and not scalable because now you kind of like couple things together. And so this is where kind of the relaxation of this verification happens, where you're like, well, what can we give up and still be sure that consensus happened and this data is valid, and how do we like recover from this? And so sharding has exactly the same problems, but in sharding we are kind of coupling all this together, and so we can do a lot of tricks. But across chains, things become more complex.
You can kind of think of sharding as a special case of cross-chain communication where you have superpowers and extra bonus tools because you designed the entire multi-chain system around supporting it.
But the complexity spans from, right now at least, from just differences in networks. So if you build, like, for example, near-to-near bridge, super easy, right? Because same light client, same execution environment, everything. But if we start doing like what we've done with Rainbow to Ethereum, and I know like Celo have been doing that, and it's super complicated because Ethereum doesn't have crypto that everybody else uses. It doesn't have enough capacity to verify even light client for the most part of other chains. So like we're starting to get into problems of like actual implementation, like how do we verify it and still be under the capacity for the network.
How do you, basically, how do you make it useful?
Well, it's the problem, at the end, it all goes to scalability, right? If your chain is way bigger than the other chain, you can just verify everything there, right, by including the whole thing and running it. Yeah. I mean, literally, right? In theory, like, a more scalable chain can include the whole Ethereum chain and verify
just
it.
embed the entire open Ethereum client into the near blockchain, yeah.
Well, yeah, kind of. Aurora, so. But yeah, if you go in the other way, right, because you do want connection both ways, that's where it becomes. And so this is where like IBC, kind of the initial side is like, well, actually, if we have the same consensus, it's complicated, but it's like, straightforward from the design perspective.
Achievable and reusable.
Achievable and reusable, yes.
Exactly.
And achieved.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the biggest use case right now for IBC, of course, is we're working with everyone to integrate, and integrations, like anything else in blockchain, is going slow. But in the Cosmos ecosystem, IBC is right now booming. You can actually communicate with about 7 different chains, and it's actually fun, and the UX is decent, something we're not really used to. So it's pretty exciting.
So does IBC only work with Tendermint/other IBC chains, or are you working on integrating things like Ethereum and Bitcoin so we can easily build Ethereum and Bitcoin bridges?
So with IBC, you do need finality. Okay. And so the main teams we're trying to integrate with are Celo, Near, Salon, Polkadot. And so those are the main teams that we're trying to work with right now. And I'd say we're moving pretty quickly in this space. We
have an active partnership with the Interchain Foundation and Chorus One to work on IBC for Celo.
Awesome. So just to summarize, the main issue we have when it comes to cross-chain messaging is all the different ways blockchains are implemented, right? So as you said, when we have a more homogeneous environment, even if the chain itself can be considered heterogeneous, as you see in like Polkadot world or maybe Tendermint world, where you have very application-specific blockchains, but because they use the same cryptography and the same communication mechanisms, those things become easier, right? So I guess one of the contrarian takes is like, why do we need decentralized bridges for some of these things, like for Bitcoin and Ethereum? Is it actually something that we even need? Is there enough censorship between communication if someone is trying to port wrapped BTC or whatever to Ethereum that the centralized take, even if less appealing to our ideals, it doesn't make sense? Is it?
You're asking a bunch of people who build chains for decentralization if centralization is needed.
Bridges as well.
That's why I said it's contrarian.
I think for retail, like no one really cares. They just want to be able to move stuff around. In our space, like, of course, you want decentralization, you want non-custodial. Of course, it helps protocols, but at the end of the day, for scalability or mass adoption, no one's really going to bat an eye.
Yeah, but no one's really going to care until they get burned by it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
like having a single point of failure. Always like it works until it doesn't, right? And so, like, if we're trying to build something that's going to be here for next, ideally decades or more, we need to build something that is resilient to attacks, and there will be attacks. Like, we know that they have happened already. They will continue happening, and so like if there is a safe somewhere with a bunch of multi-sig keys, somebody will break into it.
It's happening right now on in Thorchain, actually.
Well, exactly. Well,
Oh
that's
yeah, Rune got wrecked this morning or last night, didn't it?
For the second time this week, right?
I think so.
third time in the months.
And yet the price still won't go down. It just keeps going up. But anyways, so with IBC, for example, are you guys looking at in the future integrating chains that don't have finality, or is that just too complex of a challenge to solve? Do you think there'll be a solution to that in the near future?
Yeah, they can do it through near.
So an Ethereum bridge to near, and then a near bridge to.
To IBC chains. Yeah.
At least in the Cosmos space right now, there's multiple like threshold designs, multi-sig designs, not necessarily through IBC. They're kind of just going through normal decentralized bridges. For an example, it's like the Gravity Bridge, and that is just a multi-sig smart contract on Ethereum.
Althea, Nomic, like there's tons of these out there.
Awesome. So James, I think you were one of the first people to build like a proper Bitcoin Ethereum bridge, if I'm not mistaken. I remember you working on it and swearing quite a bit next to me, disturbing my peace and quiet
At ETH Berlin.
ETH Berlin and ETH New York, and really any other ETH that you went to. So
Swearing all the time, pretty much.
yeah,
Well, I swear more at ETH events.
yeah. So what were the largest technical challenges that you faced there?
So the largest technical challenge was the deep knowledge of the Bitcoin protocol that it required. We had to implement, bug for bug compatible versions of Bitcoin's proof of work, along with the difficulty adjustment, and we had to implement bug for bug compatibility of their transaction format and their Merkle trees, both of which are quite buggy and annoying.
And in Solidity.
In Solidity, yeah. So a language that is already not my favorite thing to work on and does cause an awful lot of swearing.
Why is that, James?
That is a panel all by itself. That's a 10-minute, one-man show. But the deep
Coming
knowledge.
on YouTube near you.
Oh, actually, that's a fun idea. Each of these light clients that we build requires incredibly deep knowledge of the consensus system of their own chain, and it has to be bespoke per consensus system. And so when we're talking about the expense of building these, what we mean is that blockchains are really, really complex and really expensive to build. And then for cross-chain communication, we're expected to build an entire second system that requires deep, intense knowledge of the first one and another couple years. So people build blockchains faster than we can build light clients. And
In other language or another platform.
yeah, another consensus algorithm, and we're constantly bike shedding all of these things. And so the cross-chain communication is never going to catch up to the growth in the number of chains. Except in Cosmos, where you get the light clients for free because everybody uses the same consensus system.
At the end of the day, everyone should just use Tendermint.
Or near. So I think what some of the people here want to know probably is how does this change with ETH2? Does ETH2 make bridging assets easier from other chains?
There's a whole new bike shed to implement. Oh, it's so...
You mean the multi-million-dollar divergence that we did into
Are
research?
there light clients already, or?
No, I don't think so. But theoretically, do any of you guys know whether ETH2's light clients are
Two light client is easier, yes, because it is proof of stake. It has finality. It has like 2 epoch finality, pretty much. So you can, at least with 2 epoch lag, you can for sure have like a final state.
Probabilistically. It could not finalize for a long time, but
Well,
that's unlikely.
Normally, yes. but anyway, at some point you have finality that you submit that instead of submitting the head pretty much. So like, for example, for us to do a fully decentralized Ethereum bridge for each one, we're maintaining a DAG of headers that we're verifying proof of work on near chain. Like full on, it's the same thing that a normal client would do, or your like good wallet with like client.
So you're essentially running a
Each
small
client.
subset of the Ethereum blockchain within.
Yeah, we
the
also
near
have. I mean,
blockchain.
we have light client and we have EVM. Right now, they just run separately.
Yeah.
And that's how TBTC works. Is you're running the Bitcoin Lite client in Solidity. That's how IBC works.
Yeah, we all
I
see like
remember maybe from like 2 or 3 years ago when we were talking about this Bitcoin thing again, you were pointing out proofs of work, right? And I remember there being certain issues with those around the proof of work consensus mechanism and never actually being able to know which chain was in the end the longest chain when you're trying to like bridge these transactions, right? How did you avoid, or how did you come around that issue when it came to the Bitcoin bridge?
Well, actually, we never did. So we never got to the NEPO POWs or the Fly client stuff because those just can't be done with Bitcoin without a soft fork. So TBTC pays to verify every Bitcoin header as it occurs. We push this all into a smart contract on Ethereum. It costs tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in ETH every month to maintain. And Bitcoin is the cheapest possible proof of work client you can make. So Near is getting away with the Ethereum client by having a much higher throughput and much cheaper gas. And it's working so far.
So who's paying for this?
TBTC is being paid for by Keep, the Keep company. They're putting up the ETH to maintain the relay.
Do they get any fees for doing this? What's their incentive?
No, the incentive is that they built TBTC and they want it to work.
Okay, perfect.
But so this is actually an interesting question because with the bridge, right, you can actually you start generating liquidity, you start generating financial transactions, so you do have a financial model and fees and everything. So potentially it should be enough to cover the operational fees, but it's probably not right now.
There's a bunch of different issues here, like TBTC, for example, required a lot of collateral, a bunch of extra collateral that they're trying to cut down for V2. And that means that most protocol fees had to be routed to the people putting up capital to ensure that they were paid for putting up their capital. That doesn't leave very much for the core team. For bridges, I think there could be profitable models that take basis points or something, but nobody is really exploring these yet. Almost all of these bridges are maintained by some party with an interest in the success of the network on the other end. The Polygon bridge is maintained by the Polygon team who want people to use Polygon.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've been thinking about a lot in kind of like the Cosmos world. Like, depending on relayers to just run just doesn't work. In the long run, maybe in the short term because people want to have fun and play with different chains, but in the long term, you need a way to pay the relayers for them to actually make a income, and it's a secondary business model to many validators.
Yeah, maintaining these systems is a real cost. It adds up. It's the on-chain transaction fees, it's the cost of infrastructure, it's the engineers to keep it reliable. These aren't cheap and probably never will be cheap systems to build and maintain.
Just going to keep getting more
Oh yeah,
and
we're
more
going to
complex.
make more and more complex bridges, and we're going to make more and more bridges, so it's great. I'm going to have a job forever.
Do you guys think in some future of this we will come up with an idea where we can run some form of generalized bridge that can handle most chains beyond what IBC or Polkadot are able to do with their networks?
IBC.
No, but pretty much IBC, same as Rainbow, it's a protocol. It's like the specific implementation, you then customize the light client, you customize kind of connectors in our case, or channels.
Yeah, channels.
Yeah, so it's we have now protocols which they're general as a protocol, but somebody still needs to go and write specific light client implementation and still run their layers.
Someone still needs to do the tough job. That's what we have James for.
Yeah, that's what.
Because James is a sadist at its best.
Masochist.
They're learning all of those blockchains and their tech, huh?
Yeah, it's fun. I've worked on, a dozen different blockchains with different execution environments. It does get a little like samey after a while, a bunch of the same decisions in slightly different costumes. To answer your original question, can we make like a bridge that is very reusable? The answer is yes, we can, but only at the cost of security. You have to make a security trade-off. IBC and other light clients guarantee that no invalid messages can be received unless the sending chain failed entirely, just exploded, burned down. If you are willing to sacrifice that, you can make a... you can make bridges that can go anywhere. The question is, like, what exact sacrifice do you make? Do we turn this into Thorchain, where it's a trusted set of signers that are coordinated somehow? Do we turn this into the Polygon bridge?
Chat, making sure they have all the money from the bridges.
Yeah,
Discord.
funds are SAFU. The trade-off that my team is exploring is, can we make the odds of successful fraud negligible? And we think we have a good approach to it, but it's still very early days for the tech. It's not nearly as mature as Rainbow Bridge or IBC. But the benefit is that it can go to many different chains very quickly and is very reusable.
Awesome. I think we'll leave it there with James being a complete masochist.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I think we'll move on to the next part of this event. Pitches. Yes, pitches.
Pitches.
Good luck, everyone, with pitches.
Good luck.
Yo, okay. Thank you, all of you. These are also like judges for the pitch event, so it's kind of funny that they talked right before it. The judges are going to go all up there and do their thing, and we're about to lightning round this whole this pitch event. I think my colleague Josh is going to come over here and just queue up the presentation real quick for the first pitcher. But let's give a little background as to what we're doing here and why we're doing it. Hackathons are